If you cry easily, this is what God sees in you. You try to hold it in, but it still comes out. A simple moment, a quiet memory, a kind word, or even a harsh one. And suddenly your eyes fill with tears. People around you don't always understand. Some stay silent, some look away, and others say things like, "You're too sensitive," or "You need to be stronger." So you start wondering, is something wrong with me? I've felt that too. There's a quiet pressure in this world to appear unshaken, to carry everything without breaking. But the Bible never teaches us to become cold or numb. In fact, it shows us something very different. God does not dismiss your tears. He pays attention to them. As Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." That means not a single tear is wasted. Not one is unseen. So maybe the question isn't why you cry so easily. Maybe the deeper question is this: what kind of heart does God see when you do? Number 1. God sees every tear you cry. And maybe that's the part we forget when emotions overwhelm us. We think our tears fall into emptiness. We assume no one truly notices. But the Bible tells a completely different story. Every tear you cry carries meaning before God. Not because you are dramatic, not because you are weak, but because He sees what others cannot see, the weight behind those tears. Sometimes you cry because of something small on the surface, but deep down, it's years of silent struggles, unspoken disappointments, and moments where you held yourself together when no one else was there. God sees that. He doesn't just see the tear itself, He sees the story behind it. In Psalm 56:8, it says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." This is not poetic exaggeration. It is a reflection of how deeply personal God is with your pain. He doesn't overlook it. He doesn't rush you past it. He holds it. Think about that for a moment. A God so attentive that He notices every tear. Not some. Not the important ones. All of them. The quiet tears you hide. The ones that fall late at night. The ones you wipe away quickly so no one asks questions. None of those are invisible to Him. And maybe that changes something inside you. Because if God Himself does not dismiss your tears, then why have you been taught to? Why have you been made to feel like your emotional depth is a flaw, when Scripture shows it is something God responds to with care? Your tears are not a sign that you are falling apart. They may be a sign that your heart is still alive, still capable of feeling, still open to God's presence, even in pain. And if God values your tears this deeply, then we need to look at something even more powerful. Because He didn't just observe human emotion, He entered into it Himself. Number 2, Jesus Himself wept, and that was not weakness. There is one moment in the Bible that is so simple, yet so revealing. 2 words, no long explanation, no complicated teaching. Just this: Jesus wept. In John 11:35 it says, Jesus wept. That's it. And yet, those 2 words carry a depth that challenges everything the world says about strength, because this was not an ordinary man. This was Jesus, the Son of God, the one who had power over life and death, the one who knew He was about to raise Lazarus from the grave. And still, He wept. Why? Not because He lacked control. Not because He was overwhelmed in the way we often think of weakness. He wept because He felt. He stood in the presence of grief, of loss, of human sorrow, and He allowed His heart to respond. This changes everything, because if tears were truly a sign of weakness, then Jesus would have avoided them. He would have stood distant, unaffected, above the moment. But he didn't. He stepped into the pain of others. He shared in it. That means your tears are not something to be ashamed of. They are something Jesus himself expressed. And not once, but in different moments throughout his life. When he looked at Jerusalem, when he faced suffering, when he carried the weight of humanity. There is a strength in allowing your heart to feel without becoming hardened. A strength in not shutting down just to appear strong. Jesus shows us that true strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to remain open, even in a broken world. So when you cry easily, you are not stepping away from the image of Christ. In some ways, you are reflecting it. And that leads us to something deeper, because if your tears reflect a heart that feels, then what does that say about the condition of your heart before God? Number 3, a soft heart is a sign of spiritual sensitivity. And maybe that's where the real difference begins. Not in how often you cry, but in what your heart is able to feel. Because the Bible doesn't celebrate a hardened heart. It warns against it. Over and over again, Scripture shows that when a heart becomes numb, resistant, or closed off, that's when we drift away from God's voice. But your heart, it still responds. It still reacts. It still feels deeply. That matters more than you think. There are people who can walk through pain and feel nothing. People who hear truth and remain unchanged. People who see suffering and are unmoved. The Bible doesn't call that strength. It calls that hardness. And a hardened heart struggles to recognize God's presence because it no longer responds to what is good, what is right, what is true. In Ezekiel 36:26, God says, "I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh, and give you a heart of flesh." A heart of flesh. That means a heart that feels, that responds, that is alive. So when you find yourself tearing up easily, when something small touches you, when kindness moves you or pain affects you deeply, it may not be weakness at all. It may be evidence that your heart is still soft, still awake, still sensitive to what matters. And yes, that kind of heart can feel heavy at times. It can make you more aware of pain, more affected by words, more easily overwhelmed. But it also means you are more capable of compassion, more open to conviction, more aware of God's presence. A soft heart is not a fragile heart. It is a responsive heart, one that hasn't been shut down by the world. And if your heart is still that open, then maybe your tears are not just emotional reactions. Maybe they are something more, something that reaches beyond words themselves. Number 4. Tears can be a language between you and God. Because there are moments when words just don't come. You try to pray, but nothing forms clearly. Your thoughts feel scattered, your voice feels weak, and all that remains are tears. And in those moments, it can feel like you're failing at prayer, like you don't know what to say, like you're not doing it right. But the Bible never says that prayer must always be spoken clearly or perfectly. In fact, it shows that God understands what we cannot express. He listens beyond words. In Romans 8:26 it says, "Likewise the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought. But the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words." That means even when you cannot form a sentence, even when all you have are quiet sobs or silent tears, God still hears you. Your tears can become your prayer. They carry what your mouth cannot explain. They express what your mind cannot organize. And somehow, in a way we don't fully understand, God receives that. He doesn't require polished words. He doesn't demand perfect structure. He responds to what is real. So those moments when you sit in silence, eyes filled with tears, you are not distant from God. you may actually be closer than you realize. Because real connection doesn't always come through speech. Sometimes it comes through honesty, through vulnerability, through a heart that is open enough to feel and honest enough not to hide it. And if your tears can speak to God in that way, then maybe what the world calls weakness is actually something God deeply understands and even values. Number 5, the world calls it weakness. God calls it blessed. And this is where everything begins to turn, because the way God sees you is not the way the world labels you. The world looks at someone who cries easily and says, "You're too much, you're too emotional, you need to toughen up." But Scripture doesn't speak that way. It speaks with a different voice, one that sees value where others see flaw. Jesus said something that sounds almost upside down in today's culture. In Matthew 5-4, he says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed, not rejected, not corrected, not told to hide their tears. Blessed." That means there is something sacred in your ability to feel deeply. Mourning is not just about loss. It's about having a heart that responds to pain, to injustice, to brokenness. It's about being aware enough to care. The world praises those who can remain unaffected. But God draws near to those who are honest about their pain. He meets them there. He comforts them there. He doesn't ask them to pretend they are strong. He becomes their strength. So when people misunderstand you, when they reduce your sensitivity to weakness, remember that their definition is not the final one. God does not measure you by how well you hide your emotions. He sees the sincerity behind them. And maybe the reason you feel things so deeply is not because you are weak, but because you are not numb. You haven't shut down. You haven't built walls around your heart to avoid pain. And in God's eyes, that kind of heart is not something to fix. It's something He draws close to. Because a heart like that is not just meant to feel. It is meant to be used for something greater. Number 6, God can turn your tears into purpose. Because the story doesn't end with your tears, it moves through them. What you feel so deeply today may become the very thing God uses tomorrow. The sensitivity you struggle with, the emotions you wish you could control, the tears you sometimes feel embarrassed about, those may be shaping you in ways you don't yet see. God often works through what we try to hide. In 2 Corinthians 1-4, it says, "He comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." That means your pain is not wasted. Your tears are not meaningless. They are part of a process where God meets you, strengthens you, and then allows you to become a source of comfort for someone else. Think about it. The people who bring the most comfort are often the ones who have felt deeply themselves, the ones who understand what it means to hurt, the ones who don't rush others past their pain because they know what it feels like to sit in it. Maybe that's who you are becoming. Not someone weak, but someone who can see what others miss, someone who can feel what others overlook, someone who can stand beside another person and say, "I understand," and truly mean it. Your tears may be preparing you to carry compassion in a way that cannot be taught. It can only be lived. So instead of fighting against who you are, instead of wishing your heart were harder, quieter, less affected, maybe it's time to see it differently. Because what you thought was your weakness may actually be the beginning of your purpose. Hold on to this truth when your tears become strength. You've spent so long wondering why your heart feels this way, why your eyes fill so quickly, why emotions seem to rise before you can stop them. And maybe, deep down, you've wished you could change it. Be less sensitive, less affected, less you. But now you see it differently. Your tears are not something to hide. They are something God sees. They are not signs that you are breaking. They are signs that your heart is still alive, still open, still capable of love, compassion, and connection. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You are human, and more than that, you are someone God is shaping with intention. So the next time tears come, don't rush to silence them. Let them speak. Let them remind you that your heart has not grown cold in a world that often encourages it to, because sometimes the quiet strength God is building in you begins with a single tear.